When most people start simplifying, there's this sense of relief and joy and even satisfaction from letting go. Frustration is not the result for most people. However, if you are getting frustrated by this, it might just be a sign that you're doing it too quickly, you're going too far, and it's time to just pause. And it doesn't mean stop simplifying or, you know what, the way I was doing it before was better. No, it's too much discomfort at once. It's okay to slow down and simplify at your own pace.
Podcast has bad words.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, TK Coleman.
Let's make it a beautiful day.
From Alabama's here.
Hi, everybody.
We've got the rest of our team in the studio, and I've got a very special guest here. Hi, Ryan. Oh, wait. We don't even need the cardboard cutout today, do we? Guess who's back, y'all?
Hey!
Oh, yeah.
Guess who's back? Guess who's back?
Oh, Nicodemus, welcome back.
Dude, it is good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I guess we can get rid of this cardboard guy.
No way, dude. That guy, he seems he seemed pretty cool, man.
He's just gonna take a nap.
For audio listeners, we had Ryan's cardboard cutout here, but Ryan is actually in the studio with us today. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, a caller has a question about the frustrating downsides of minimizing. Then we're going to do a big pivot to a conversation with ice bath expert Adrienne Jezick about the unexpected benefits of ice baths and cold exposure. Then we've got our lightning round segment. We got a FAMS question for you and a listener tip as well. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 416, where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalist. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel. We have one YouTube channel now, by the way, youtube.com/theminimalist. We've condensed everything there. We've simplified our YouTube. You can check that out. But you keep us 100% advertisement free because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers today. If you have a question or a comment for our show, you can give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Aowen.
Oh, hi there. This is Aowen calling from Nova Scotia, Canada. I have a question. I am so happy I discovered you guys and that I am becoming a minimalist. But I've noticed as I slowly change and reduce all of my stuff that I have, such as, let's say, I'm down to 2 coffee mugs, for instance, I'm noticing it's changing my routine here at home and how I do things. And I'm just wondering, just for an example, I'm doing more laundry, for example, as well. And it's just everything is changing how I do things now as a minimalist. And I'm finding it to be very difficult, in the sense of changing my routine and how I do things. And I'm just wondering, how does reducing your stuff affect your daily routine for day-to-day living? Because I'm finding the little changes just to be very frustrating at times. And it can lead me to an increase in cleaning and changing how I live. I haven't found creative solutions yet to bring me into a flow and peace yet. So I'm just wondering if you guys could address this on the show. Thanks so much, guys, for what you do. Bye for now.
You know what's fascinating is I often talk to people when we're on the road, and when they first embark on a change, like letting go of material possessions, what happens? They get frustrated or they feel some discomfort. Mm-hmm. It's not real pain, but it's like, hey, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to this routine. My routine is different now. And even though I didn't like my old routine, I don't tell myself that story. Oh, I just dislike change as well.
Yeah.
But think about your old routine when you had all the excess stuff. You had to do more cleaning, or now you're talking about doing laundry. Well, more frequently now. Maybe you did get rid of too many clothes. If you have to do laundry every day or something, then that could be a burden. Minimalism is not about downsizing to a space in which you're now more burdened, or you're at a place of discomfort where you're experiencing pain, but you're in that discomfort zone. And you're growing, because you grow when you are in the discomfort zone. Ryan, when we talk to people about the sort of side effects or the frustration they experience from minimizing, which is rare, but it happens from time to time when you feel discomfort, what kind of stories do you hear from folks?
Well, I mean, this is a common one, just getting used to the whole, simplifying and realizing that minimalism is simple, but it is not easy. And I'll tell you, man, that's why I haven't taken on the minimalist aesthetics, because I imagine it would be me calling in instead of this caller, because to have the minimalist aesthetics, it takes a lot of work. It is a lot of cleaning and dusting and organizing in the sense of getting the room where you want it, but keeping that room where you want it.
Yes.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, because we often think I'm going to get it to a set point, it's going to be fixed. But just like your car, I actually had to get my car fixed yesterday. It broke down on me. Just the battery died. I didn't know if it was my alternator or whatever. And so I fixed it, right? But guess what? At some point, it will be unfixed because something else will break. I'll get a flat tire. The alternator will go out, the transmission, whatever. The flux capacitor.
You didn't buy the flux capacitor, did you?
It was $3,000. It was super cheap.
Oh man, they must have thrown in the the washer blinker fluid too.
Yeah, man. No charge.
Yeah. No, she's talking about the frustrations that she's coming up against with minimalism each day, and it just made me think dude, I come up against frustrations every day, regardless of what it is. At least I'm choosing my frustrations,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, TK, maybe you can expand on this, but maybe that frustration is a sign that, letting go can be difficult sometimes. And that's okay. I don't want to pathologize frustration. Maybe it's that difficult period where you get the real sore muscles if you're working out and you get frustrated by that. But that just shows you that you're growing.
Yeah, sometimes it's more motivating to just begin by saying, this is going to be incredibly difficult. This won't be easy. That way, when you encounter the difficulties, you're not overly dramatic about it. You're not shocked by it. And you don't take it so personally, like I'm the only one in the universe that's facing this obstacle. I told myself ahead of time this wasn't going to be easy, but that it would be worth doing. The other day, I was ready to go to bed. And so I go to my bedroom and there's all this stuff that's covering the bed because my wife is doing a bunch of decluttering. So she's got a bunch of stuff all over the place. And she sees that I'm ready to go to bed. And she says, oh, okay, I'll get all this stuff. And as she starts getting it, I notice that I do something that I wouldn't have done if it was 2 p.m. I get passionate about helping her move the stuff. And I'm helping her figure out where it needs to go and so on. Why? Because I want it to get in the bed. It's one thing to declutter. It's one thing to try to figure out what you're trying to get rid of. It's another thing to have a positive goal or ambition that's driving you through that. Did I want to be moving stuff around? No, but I wanted to get in bed, and that was my focus. And so I think the first thing to minimalize is any sense of obligatory minimalism, and begin by saying, hey, what's the space I'm excited about freeing up? What's the area that I never got to use because it's so full of clutter that I'm super excited about getting back so I can do that stuff that I'm interested in? And then you start there and you declutter that stuff, and you're no longer experiencing it as primarily a source of frustration, primarily a job. You're experiencing it as, ooh, I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer to having that space the way I want it to be.
I think one of the reasons that we get frustrated by these things, like when you buy a tool, if I go down to the hardware store down the street and I buy a hammer and I use it for what I need it for. So I need to hammer some nails into the wall to hang some photos. Great. I come home, tap, 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 tap. All of a sudden, I'm done. But now if I carry this hammer around with me everywhere, it's going to become frustrating. This is a burden. And if I start hitting myself in the head with it, which is often what happens with minimalism, and I think that might be where Aowen is right now, is now she's hitting herself and saying, why isn't this minimalism working? And it's like, well, it did work. You used it for what you used it for. And if you went too far, if I took that hammer and hammered the wall and oops, now there's a hole in the wall, now I need to fix that. And so if you simplified so much that you're doing the laundry more frequently and you don't like that, you know what the solution to that is? Bring in a couple more shirts or pairs of underwear or pairs of pants or whatever it might be to figure out what that appropriate set point is for you. I just want to give one word of warning, though. When most people start simplifying, and Ryan, you've seen this when we go out on tour, when most people start simplifying, there's this sense of relief and joy and even satisfaction from letting go. Frustration is not the result for most people. However, if you are getting frustrated by this, it might just be a sign that you're doing it too quickly, you're going too far, and it's time to just pause. And it doesn't mean stop simplifying or, you know what, the way I was doing it before was better. No, it's too much discomfort at once. It's okay to slow down and simplify at your own pace.
It makes me think about when we were in Atlanta, that gentleman had the question. He's like, man, I've been minimizing everything. I've been getting rid of stuff. But then I realized like I need that stuff. And, last week I'm like, oh, what did I do with that? Whatever. And, the week before that, I was looking for something. Oh yeah, I minimized that. And, it was almost like he was kind of saying it tongue in cheek, but I'm like, if you're getting rid of the stuff that you actually are going to use, then you might be getting rid of the stuff wrong. So maybe there's some other boundaries you need to like set up for yourself. But, even going through that discomfort of getting rid of something that you actually needed. I mean, I really like how you highlighted it there. Like, discomfort is the place in which we grow. And like, for me at this point, like I look for things to be uncomfortable that will challenge me, that will really help me push through something. Because what's going to happen is you're either going to just go right back where you were, or you're going to learn something and start behaving differently. So I would say, yeah, if you can find a way to embrace this discomfort, like embrace that discomfort.
And it's important to distinguish too between a need and a withdrawal symptom because they feel the same early on, right? Mm-hmm. A need is something that I can't optimally function without. Well, that's also true when you have a withdrawal symptom. The difference is if I can fight through the withdrawal symptom, if I can be persevering and patient, then I can get through to this other side where I get to say I'm free.
Aowen, I'd love to send you a copy of our book, Everything That Remains. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. Ryan, I just shared with you yesterday, we have this super talented artist. Her name is Gracie, and she has designed the most beautiful cover. So right now, if you're listening to this when the episode comes out, Everything That Remains will have its old cover, its original cover for the next few weeks. And then we are doing the 10th anniversary edition of Everything That Remains with a beautiful brand new cover. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. But Professor Sean, if you could, actually Malabama, if you'll reach out to Aowen and send her a copy. If you want the audiobook version, if you like our podcast, you'll probably enjoy the audiobook version. Or if you want the book or the ebook version, we'll be happy to send you a copy of Everything That Remains. Still my favorite thing that we have created. Welcome back, y'all. We have a very special guest for our interview today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by Adrienne Jezick from Morozko.
Yeah!
Come on.
Thanks for coming out, Adrienne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Longtime listeners know that we talk about ice baths on this podcast all the time, and occasionally people are like, why are they always talking about ice baths? And it's because for the longest time, Ryan and I, for over a decade now, we were first exposed to ice baths, I think back in like 2011, 2012. There's a Russian bathhouse right down the street from here, Voda Spa. And I mean, I was terrified the first time I got into ice. And I wanted to bring you on because you co-founded a company called Morozko, MorozkoForge.com, for folks who are interested. And I started icing, cold exposing myself seriously about a year ago when I finally saved up enough money to buy one of these ice baths for my backyard. And so, Adrienne, I wanted to start by talking to you about how you became exposed to cold exposure.
Well, I'll tell you, it definitely started against my will. This was not something I chose. As I mentioned, I grew up in Florida. I lived in Hawaii. Phoenix and Austin summers are my favorite time of year. I can take 120 degrees, no problem. I love the heat. Even 6 years into this practice, I prefer the heat. I don't take ice baths because I like them. I take them because my life depends on them. So when I got into this practice, November of 2017, I was sick. I had 3 autoimmune conditions: Hashimoto's thyroiditis, eosinophilic esophagitis, and urticaria. And no matter what I was doing in modern medicine, I wasn't getting better. So at the height of this, I was taking more than 20 pills per day, prescriptions, vitamins, supplements, 2 live antibody shots a month from my allergist. And again, I wasn't getting better. The more these pill bottles grew on my nightstand, the worse I was feeling. And so it was hard to work. It was hard to socialize. I was losing parts of my life everywhere I looked because I just didn't have the energy to keep up. And so I was reading a lot, doing a lot of research. It started with low inflammation food regimen and like paying attention to what I was feeding my body. But even that wasn't enough. I really needed a shock to the system. So between some books like Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, as well as some fiction books like Hemingway, Steinbeck, I started to learn that deliberate cold exposure is a thing. It's something that people use for nervous system regulation. They're using it for immune health, using it for all kinds of different things. And again, this was not my first choice, but I was at my wit's end. If you'd have told me to put leeches all over my body and that would make me feel better, I would have tried it. Well, good thing this was a little easier than leeches. So started by...
Why did this leeches thing?
Right? Like that just tells you like how at my wit's end I was.
Yeah.
And so, figured how do we make this easy? Put a tub in the backyard, get a few 100 pounds of ice, bring some friends, make it a whole social experience. And now here I am staring down the barrel of the gun. Like the ice bath is right there. And I'm a competitive person, so it really helps me to have other people around in this experience. And so I took my first ice bath on November 5th or 6th of 2017. I didn't know anything about the practice. So I put one foot on either side of the tub and I put one hand on either side of the tub. And then I dropped myself into the ice water, held my breath. Turns out that lasted 9 seconds. Then I leapt out and I freaked out. And 2 things happened right away. For one, the chronic pain that I'd had in my legs for more than a decade was completely gone. Anyone who ever deals with chronic pain or illness can tell you that even a moment's relief, you would do whatever it took. So I knew for sure I was going to take another ice bath. Like not that day, but definitely was going to take another ice bath. And the second thing that happened was I felt this sense of empowerment. Like I'd never felt in my entire life. And this did a couple of things for me. For one, it humbled me because I realized, well, girl, you've been living your entire life in this state of false bravado. And for 2, it was like, oh, this is something I can do. As a sick person, as someone with no energy, all I really have to do is show up, sit down, breathe. And then on the other side of it, I have a drastic experience of feeling better.
I love it. That reminds me a lot of our first experience in 2011.
Yeah.
That's so long ago, man. You're old, dude. No, I am also a very competitive person, pretty much only with Milburn, though. And I remember when we were doing the cold bath, I'm like, yeah, I wanted to get out after 9 seconds. I'm like, no, I'm going to stand just as long as Milburn. And I don't think I did, but I did stand a couple minutes. But I remember when we were laying there, after you get the endorphins going, we're laying on the chair, and Josh looks at me. He was like, "Is this what it feels like to be on mushrooms?"
So you tried ice baths before you tried psychedelics?
Yes. So
well then,
I think one might argue that an ice bath is a type of psychedelic experience.
It's a medicine journey all on its own.
It absolutely is.
And for me, it also started because I had many of the problems that you described, autoimmune conditions, and I dialed in my diet, which helped immensely. I started grounding, which really, really helped immensely. But the third thing that has helped me more than anything else is a daily practice in ice water. I mean, when we lived in Montana, well, Ryan still lives in Montana, but when we lived in Montana, you could get really cold showers there in the winter. Oh, yeah. But here in California, I live in Ojai. It's hard to get a cold shower. And so the cold shower, I don't really love, but So I started buying 100 pounds of ice and putting it in my bathtub until I could afford to actually buy a unit that I have in my backyard that is now making its own ice. And so I want to talk to you about, why is cold exposure, because it's been happening for millennia, but why is it in the zeitgeist just in the last few years? What do you think has made it reach this critical tipping point?
Well, I think that, and this is just my opinion, but I think we've bred a lot of rebels over the last few years. A lot of people that are like, you know what we're doing in the modern medical system isn't working. Same as my journey. What I was doing in the modern medical system wasn't working. And so I started to branch out on my own. And the beauty of that is it's kind of like a pendulum swing. We're going to come back to these things. We're going to come back to the things that have gotten us as far as we've gotten. So heat exposure, cold exposure, fasting, breath work, all of these tools that are completely free that you can take with you anywhere you go and no one can take from you. So when you lean into these tools, you start developing these practices, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to pay out the wazoo to feel better. I can do it with a moment of mindfulness and breath work and change my state of mind. I can do it with a 2-minute ice bath, get a 500+% increase in norepinephrine and dopamine, and then retrain my brain and my body how to call that forward on cue.
Wow.
So it's going back to basics.
Yeah. I'm sorry, when you're discovering all this and you feel that empowerment, you're still connected with all these doctors who are giving you treatments that aren't making a difference. Did you experience anything interesting when you go back to them and say, hey, I've discovered something?
Yes, this is really what blew me away. So first ice bath, November of 2017, I had a goal to get to Burning Man. And I knew that to get to Burning Man, I had to make sure that two things, Burning Man and ayahuasca were kind of my goals. I had to make sure of two things. One, could I live without my medication? If I were at Burning Man and something were to happen and I couldn't get this life-saving medication, what would I do? The other thing is, if I wanted to go on an ayahuasca journey, I could not be on this medication. So I had these two goals in my life that were kind of, it was like, yeah, I want to be healthy and I want to heal, but really I just want to do a bunch of drugs in the jungle. So how do I prepare my body to do that? So that was my goal. So November 2017, by I'd say about spring of 2019, I'd mapped out my plan. So I printed out all these calendar pages. I wrote down all my prescription medications, how I was going to reduce each one by each week so that I was tapering off instead of just quitting cold turkey. First thing to go, vitamins and supplements, like flat out. I knew that technically I didn't need them to survive. And at that point, my body needed such a reset that I had to just start from scratch. So I spent several months removing these medications from my body. And the more I removed them, the better I felt. Now, keep in mind, I'm still taking regular daily, if not more than once daily ice baths. Every time I take an ice bath, my body goes through a full lymphatic flush. So I'm also getting rid of like anything that's been stuck in my system for a lifetime that doesn't belong there. By the time I went into my endocrinologist in August of 2019, I hadn't taken a single prescription medication for 3 months. So I go in for my annual labs and I don't tell her. I'm not like, oh, by the way. So I just wait for my lab reading and I'm like, yeah, tell me how things are going. And she says, well, it's great. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing. Everything's within range. We're just going to keep you status quo for now. And I was like, cool, guess what? I haven't taken any prescription medications in 3 months. And she's like, what? She's like, what did you do? What are you doing? And I said, well, fasting, extended fasting, and cold exposure. Those were the number two things, the like two top things that I was doing. She's like, great. I'll jot that down in your file. I hope I never have to see you again. And I'm thinking, yeah, me too, me too. And then I walk out through the waiting room and I see more than a dozen other people, overweight, unhealthy, stuck in the system. And do you think that doctor is going to tell anyone in that waiting room that I'm a walking fucking miracle? That I literally reversed chronic illness? That I, with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, was told that I would be on this medication for life or I might die? You think she's going to tell anyone? And I knew at that moment, as that anger started to build within me, what I needed to do. And that was I needed to take it into my own hands to shout the healing benefits of the cold from the rooftops. So being here, sharing this with you guys today, you are helping me achieve my highest dreams. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for being here. Yeah, this is awesome. Like getting to share this with our audience and with us. It makes sense to me. Like, all illness comes from inflammation. And one of the best ways to stop inflammation is with an ice bath.
Yeah, and also with grounding, also with diet. When I think you combine those things together, the fasting also radically, the breath work reduces inflammation. You talked about that waiting room of people, and they would all clearly benefit from some sort of cold exposure daily or regularly. But what other types of people would benefit from ice baths or from cold exposure?
You know, it's interesting. People used to come to me and say, well, what is it good for? Like, what are ice baths good for? Well, I could talk to you for days and until I'm blue in the face about what ice baths are good for. So now what I say is, why don't you tell me what you're working on, and I'll tell you how the cold will help. There isn't anyone that I have met yet that cannot experience some benefit from deliberate cold exposure. And I think it's not just about getting cold, it's about the way we approach the cold. So if I walk up to an ice bath in my early days that I'm going to violently drop myself in and I'm going to hold my breath and I'm going to muscle through it and I could do this. I'm actually reinforcing that aggressive experience. I'm reinforcing the chemicals in my body that are saying I'm approaching this with an aggressive competitive mindset. So it's not just about getting cold. It's how can I get cold and stay calm and teach myself to remain calm when I'm actively facing that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response that's brought on by freezing temperatures.
Yeah, to this day, I still just jump in the ice bath because I just want to get it over with. But it makes sense if you have a good mindset going into it, you're going to have a lot more effective experience. What I do is I sit in the sauna until the cold plunge sounds good. And then I'll sit in the cold plunge until the sauna sounds good. And I just keep going back and forth.
Well, I didn't have a sauna for the longest time. And so I would just get into the cold plunge. Even in the winter, in the mornings, it's 33 degrees outside. And the cold plunge is also 33 degrees. And I would just get right in it. And at first, you get that resistance before you step in. But overcoming the resistance is merely stepping in and not overreacting, or maybe not even reacting at all. Pausing the reaction through breathing. And what I've noticed is tremendous benefits for me. My wife is a paragon of health, but even for her, like just tremendous benefits in her sleep, tremendous benefits in, she was already super lean, but she looks even more like a CrossFitter now. And so like, how awesome is that? There are all these other benefits, which I didn't even anticipate. The reason I do it is because of the inflammation. I don't want to feel like I'm in tremendous pain, but I've experienced so much more from the benefits of cold exposure. Let's say that you have someone though, they want to save up, they want to buy a Morozko unit, but they don't have the money for that, but they still want some cold exposure right now. What do you recommend to those folks?
So there are a lot of different ways that we can access the cold. And I have discovered over the years that the number one barrier to a deliberate cold exposure practice is access. So you can start in nature. Most people live in a place where they can access cold water in nature, whether that's a river, a lake, a stream, a waterfall, a pool, the ocean. As long as it's 55 degrees or below, or as long as you're experiencing discomfort, you are putting yourself into that state to help you overcome that discomfort. So nature, truly, if you can get it in nature, get it in nature. Again, Phoenix, Austin, I'm not getting it in nature.
Wait, so just by visiting Chicago and taking a walk, I'm helping myself?
Cold air is different than cold water.
Okay.
So this is why cryo chambers are really cool, but cold water is like cold concentrate. So cold air is going to affect the surfaces of your skin. Cold water is going to penetrate. That's going to affect your internal organs. That's going to affect your internal system. So nature is great if you can get it in cold water. So keep that in mind. Cold air, cool. Cold water, concentrates. Cold concentrate.
I was in the ocean with my daughter this weekend, and it was cold-ish. It was 62 degrees or something. And she looks over and she goes, "Is this just as cold as the ice bath?" And I'm like, well, no, but you are getting some sort of benefit from exposing yourself to it. Although I noticed, since I do an ice bath every day, getting to the cold ocean was absolutely nothing.
By that time, it feels like a hot tub. Yeah, 62. Oh my gosh.
So
nature is the best, but also Also, you can look for a facility near you that maybe offers cold as a service. These hot and cold contrast centers are popping up everywhere. Lots of gyms have them. Lots of spas have them. So keep an eye out where you can get cold as a service. You can always gather a bunch of friends and get a container, and everybody's responsible for bringing a couple 20-pound bags of ice. Make sure if you're doing it that way, like in your backyard without an insulated tub, you have at least 200 to 300 pounds of ice for every 4 or 5 people. You can also take a cold shower. My least favorite. I'd rather sit calmly in 33-degree water than be locally pelted with 70-degree water.
Yes.
I feel like the effects are just not the same. It's very aggressive. You can also fill a large bowl with ice, and then you can dunk your face 3 to 5 times, dunk your hands 3 to 5 times, dunk your feet 3 to 5 times. Do it in that order so you don't have foot water on your face. And also, any amount
Unless you're
of
into
cold.
that kind of thing.
I mean, maybe you're into that kind of thing, but any
Ryan.
amount of cold is a good amount of cold.
Talk more about the cold shower because that feels really accessible to me.
Yeah. So the goal with a cold shower is just to remain calm and try and get it all over the body that you can. So concentrating at the back of the base of the neck where the vagus nerve is located, making sure that you're rotating your body. You're not just like muscling through in one localized spot, getting the top of your head, your hands, your feet fully submerged in that, and meeting it with a calm mindset. Not going like, I'm going to take it for 2 minutes and I get to, you know, like just
feel
take
like
a
that
deep
right
breath.
now.
Yeah, but just like take a deep breath. Understand it is uncomfortable and you're doing it anyway. Understand you could be feeling anxiety or fear and you're doing it anyway. So the idea is approach it with a calm mindset. So when you turn that dial to cold, choose to turn that dial to cold. You are in charge here. Feel that empowerment. As you stand in it, don't hold your breath. Breathe deep into your belly. Hold your hand on your chest. Hold your other hand on your belly. Make sure your belly is expanding with each inhale. And also, when you reach that end of 2 minutes or however long you take your cold shower, turn the water off and get out. Don't make a big scene of it. Like, it's so cold, I'm wrapping in my towel. You're creating a physical muscle memory of this experience. And what do you want to remember about it? Do you want to remember that it was so hard and so uncomfortable? Or do you want to be like, yeah, I got this?
I always celebrate at the end of my ice baths, but it's in a really joyous way. It's woo, like, and it creates this, I'm looking forward to going back to it. It's like the remembering self. Like, I know when I'm in there, I'm not like, oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Your body's kind of panicked and you want to get out. But if you breathe through it, by the end of it, I feel so freaking alive at the end of an ice bath. And when she mentioned the cold showers, like, and you said that's the most accessible to me, I agree. It's harder to get into a cold shower than it is to a cold bath. And so the thing I was doing at home is I was just, when I didn't have an ice bath at home, I had a bathtub. And so I'd fill it with 70 pounds of ice just for myself. And I would spend time exposing myself to the cold. You can get a trough for your backyard as well.
I've seen people doing it in garbage cans, Rubbermaid containers.
Yeah.
Like, pick a thing.
So, a couple of things here. This physiological memory you're referring to, where how I respond to this, my body's going to carry that with me, and I'm going to approach life in that way. So even if I'm feeling tense, if I fake it till I make it, so to speak, and be like, nah, baby, you're okay. Breathe. You're good. You're saying I get to bring that disposition with me into the real world?
Yes, because it's the practice. So this is also why this is such an effective practice for any type of trauma healing, PTSD, anyone who's ever been through, I mean, literally anyone who's ever been through trauma. You can recreate that story of trauma because you're re-experiencing it from a place of safety. So what happens is we're training our brains, we're training our bodies how to respond when stress is introduced. There's no such thing as not having stress in our lives. I drove here and I was cut off, 3 times. And so every time you're going, and you can panic, or you can go, oh, I wonder if they're learning how to drive. I've been there, So it gives us this opportunity to practice the pause. I'm not pretending it's not happening. I accept that it's happening to me, and I take a deep breath and I respond to it. So what's happening too is you're producing more than 500% increase. If you're below 35 degrees, fully submerged to the neck, arms and hands in for 2 minutes, you create a 500% increase of norepinephrine and dopamine in the brain. Well, what's happening in that process is you are smoothing over tens of thousands of hardwired neural pathways created from a state of stress and trauma. You're replacing it with 10,000s of new neural pathways created from a place of calm, if you're approaching it with a calm mindset, while producing all this copious amounts of norepinephrine and dopamine. So the next time you're standing on stage or you get caught off in traffic, or maybe you're having a difficult romantic conversation, raising a toddler, a teenager, or a parent, you know that you can take a deep breath, accept that that stress is in your life, and respond to it rather than become reactive to it.
So you can use this like, hey, even if you don't have any health problems, you can use this as a tool to train yourself to be composed in the midst of traumatic
Whether you
experiences.
do have health problems, you don't have health problems, or you don't know you have health problems, you can use this as a tool to train your brain to how to respond to stress. Did a talk for UC Berkeley last night for students on how we can use cold therapy to train ourselves in stress inoculation. So like you don't have to panic before every final or midterm or exam. You can take a deep breath, accept that this is what stress feels like. I love to tell people this is what cold feels like. And so this is what stress feels like. And instead of being reactive to it, like, oh my God, this is painful. Oh my God, this is stressful. Oh my gosh, I'm so afraid or anxious. You're just like, oh, this is what anxiety feels like.
Yeah. I'm going to put a link in the show notes, or Professor Sean will put a link in the show notes to Morozko's YouTube channel, because you do some cold exposure meditations on there as well. You have a lovely voice for those.
Thank you.
I need to expose my 10-year-old to that, because she likes to get into the cold bath, but only when it's hot outside, and then she'll get in for 30 seconds and think she braved the most difficult thing in her life.
She probably
did. It might actually be the most difficult thing. As we wrap this up, can you tell me, for the average listener, we have a few million people who are listening to this. Can you tell me, for the average listener, what are some of the biggest unexpected benefits they might experience from a regular cold practice?
It's the empowerment. It's this ability to do hard things. You know, there are so many things in life that we hesitate to do. You know, maybe we created a podcast or a piece of art or a written work, and we're afraid to put it out because it's not perfect. What this does is it helps you see the beauty in the imperfection. It helps you understand that we are all experiencing imposter syndrome. We are all going through depression and anxiety. This is another tool to help us move through that. And so it's not that we're not afraid. This just helps us kind of make love to that fear a little bit, and like gives us another tool to move through that.
There's something about like, if I can make it through this cold bath, there's probably there's some other things I could probably make it through that I'm scared to do. Because the resiliency that you experience with an ice bath is just, it does give you that sense of empowerment for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adrienne Jezick.
Thanks, you guys.
MorozkoForge.com. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Not a sponsor of ours, because we don't do advertisements on this podcast. I've just gotten so much value from cold exposure. I want to thank you for the work you're doing and acknowledge that you're doing something really special for this world. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, you guys. Thanks so much for having me on, and thank you for helping me achieve my greatest vision, which is to spread the healing benefits of the cold to the masses.
Oh, much love. Thank you.
Much love.
Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow the Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and Threads. We're at the Minimalists on all of those platforms. During the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put those minimal maxims in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast, so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. By the way, we'll send those show notes to your inbox every week for free. We'll never send you spam or junk or advertisements, but every Monday we'll send you the show notes with all of our minimal maxims if you sign up for our email list. Theminimalists.email is where you do that. Today we have a question from Hannah.
How do we address the emotional loneliness that comes after retail therapy? Buying stuff helps for a little while, but then the excitement of having new things wears off, and you're right back where you started. How do we find the balance?
Nicodemus, you want to start this one?
Sure. My pithy answer is this: true joy enables us to appreciate mundane moments as much as exciting moments. And you know, that's what I hear in Hannah's question here. How do I find the balance between retail therapy and the excitement that it brings, and then the loneliness that comes after?
Yeah.
That loneliness it's part of life. Now, I would just suggest not using retail therapy at all, because it almost sounds like she's asking, like, how can I do retail therapy and have a balance with it? And if you are looking externally for something to make you happy or to make you feel good, I promise you there is no thing that one material possession you can bring into your life that's going to make you feel complete or going to make you feel excited. So learn how to really appreciate those mundane moments. I mean, I need to take my own advice. I was just talking about it earlier. It's one of the hardest things for me. But appreciating the mundane as much as the exciting parts, that's the key.
I got to say that retail therapy, it's sort of an oxymoron, because it actually makes you often more depressed, more upset, more stressed, more overwhelmed, more in debt. It's not therapy at all. But also, how do I find the balance with retail therapy? It's like saying, how do I find the balance with opioids? Well, if I have an opioid addiction, what's the appropriate amount of opioids for me to take each day? Well, yeah, of course, you can't stop cold turkey with opioids without going into tremendous withdrawal. But I think the same thing is true with retail therapy. There's nothing wrong inherently with opioids. They can be really helpful if you go through a surgery or you have some sort of acute pain that you need to dull that pain for a day or a week or whatever after a big surgery, right? But if you continue to stay on them in perpetuity, that's what we do with our retail therapy. And it makes us overwhelmed. It makes us depressed. It puts us in a place that is not therapeutic. It's sort of the opposite of therapeutic. Let's throw 60 seconds on the clock for TK Coleman.
A thing can't betray you if it was never your friend in the first place. The lyrics from Al Wilson's The Snake. On her way to work one morning down the path alongside the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor half-frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Oh, well, she cried, I'll take you in and I'll take care of you. Take me in, oh tender woman, take me in. She wrapped him up all cozy in a coverture of silk and then laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work that night. As soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. Now she clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. If I hadn't brought you in by now, you might have died. Now she stroked his pretty skin again and then kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thanks, that snake gave her a vicious bite. I saved you, cried the woman, and you even bit me. Why? And you know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you brought me in. There's nothing wrong with our instinct to nurture, but that instinct isn't well used on snakes. The snakes always bite back. You got to take that instinct and apply it to your own desire to be well. Retail therapy is a snake. The way you get over the disappointment that follows is by understanding that it follows from the very nature of the thing.
Yeah, consumerism is the most dangerous snake because it looks beautiful from the outside. If I just buy this, finally I'll feel complete. I got something pithy for you. Progress in the wrong direction is worse than doing nothing. And when you buy something, it feels like I'm making some sort of progress because you feel that momentary blip of excitement, but you don't realize maybe I'm actually going the wrong way. It feels like at least I'm doing something. If you're in Dayton, Ohio, and you want to go to LA, I just got to do something. I'll start driving east and I'll figure it out. I'm progressing in the wrong direction. It's better to have not done anything at all and then figure out what is the direction in which I want to travel. But when I get real excited, I just need to do something. I need to take action right now. That's fine. I want to make sure I'm taking action in the right direction. We got another question here. We'll check in with our Patreon Zoom call in a moment. But first, real quick for right here, right now, here's 1 or 2 or 3 things going on in the life of the Minimalists. It's Nicodemus's 42nd birthday, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
And we're asking for a birthday gift. One of our rules in the Minimalist rule book is the Minimalist gift-getting rule, right? Which sounds counterintuitive at first. You're like, wait, what a gift-getting rule? As a minimalist, why would you want to get gifts? Well, the gift-getting rule is to ask for better gifts. So someone doesn't just give you something out of obligation. Here, I bought you this tie clip. Here, I bought you these glass slippers, Ryan, which is actually what I got him for his 42nd birthday.
Oh my God, spoiler alert.
It's going to show off his webbed toes. It's going to be beautiful.
Wait a minute, man. This sounds
Hey,
like
man.
a gift grift.
Mariah's into it, and that's all that matters. A grift gift.
Yeah, what do you want, like a Lambo?
Yeah, right.
Even better than a Lambo. We ask this only one time a year. If you'd be willing to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We don't do this every episode. We're not on our YouTube channel. Please make sure you like and subscribe and click the bell and the notification over here and ding dong ding. Whatever. No. Once a year, we say, hey, would you get us a birthday gift? And it's Ryan's 42nd birthday. And so if you'd head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a glowing review. Why? Because that helps us reach more people. You are our marketing department. We don't spend money on advertisements, obviously. And so the way that we reach other people is word of mouth. When someone sends a podcast episode to their husband or their wife or their cousin or their aunt or their daughter or their friend or their coworker, this is how we reach more people.
Yeah.
But another way we do it is if you rate the podcast, then more people will hear about this message of living with less.
I would really appreciate it. Ding dong ding.
And for those who need it in Maxim form, help us celebrate Ryan's 42 with the review from Beautiful You.
Yeah. I like ding dong ding better. That's how we should end every podcast now.
Matter of fact, can we just cut out what I just did?
All right, so tomorrow is Halloween, and that means the day after that is the first day of a brand new month. It's also Ryan's wife's birthday as well. So
Yeah.
happy birthday to Mariah on November 1st. But it is a brand new month, which means it's a great opportunity for you to start the 30-day minimalism game. This week on the private podcast, we're going to hear from our team. They recently played the 30-day minimalism game. You don't have to wait to hear that, though. You can download the free calendar over theminimalists.com/game. You partner up with a friend, a family member, a coworker, and you get rid of some stuff next month. Whoever goes the longest wins. So make sure you bet something up front, $1 or maybe a handful of pacifiers, whatever you want to bet. Whoever goes the longest wins. If you both make it to the end of the month, then you've both won because you have gotten rid of about 500 items, and that is an amazing start. And one last thing, Ryan, we talked about this last time you called into the podcast. You've got to check out the new Patreon app, y'all. It is beautiful. It is stunning. I mean, calling it an overhaul is an understatement. They did such a good job. I like the previous Patreon app for our private podcast. I listen to our private podcast just via the RSS link in my favorite podcast app, which happens to be Overcast. But a lot of people watch the video version or they listen to the audio version of the private podcast on the Patreon app. And that experience is better than ever. Patreon.com/theminimalist for the private podcast. Speaking of Patreon, every month we do something we call FAMS, the Friday Afternoon Minimalist Zoom. We got a question from that. So Ryan, TK, Malabama's there. By the way, it's the only time you get to see Malabama's face. We don't cloak her on the Zoom calls. Someone even commented, I didn't know Professor Sean has a beard. And I had to explain that is actually just a Zoom filter. And the rest of our team joins us over there on the Friday Afternoon Minimalist Zoom, first Friday of every month. And there's a whole community going on in the chat as well. We collect some of your questions there. By the way, you can join us on that Zoom call. You can turn your camera off and just be a fly on the wall, or you can interact with us as well. And we got a question here. Who's this one from?
This one is from Amy. She says, I have kids to care for with little to no help, so my space often feels overwhelmed. It feels like I'm trying to do everything, but nothing gets done. How do we deal with the chaos of too much stuff around us, while also being the only one to take care of everything and everyone else in the home?
TK, what say you?
Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to begin by acknowledging that everyone's situation is different, and what we expect from ourselves ought to be or needs to be adjusted to what we can do. Everything according to one's station in life, everything according to one's abilities in life. And what I'm picking up from this question isn't just, hey, how do I deal with the external difficulties of having all this stuff, but how do I deal with the sense of inadequacy I feel about underperforming with all of this stuff? And my first thing I just want to say to you is, hey, you got to take it easy on yourself, and you got to extend a little bit of grace to yourself. You're doing the best that you can. You're doing amazing. Yeah, you've got some things that you can learn that can maybe make your life easier, but the best place to start from is from a place of saying, hey, I'm not doing anything wrong. I can learn some new tricks to make it easier, but I'm okay as I am. This is normal and natural for my station in life.
Yeah, it's like, where are you at? Where do you want to be? What's it going to take to get there? And use your family as a sounding board to set these boundaries up, because that's what it sounds like she's looking for, is some boundaries to be set up in the household. The beautiful thing is as the parents, that is your job.
Yes.
It's to help your kids set up boundaries. So all the stuff that they have, guess who gave it to them? Or guess who allowed it in the house?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, last night, Ella, my daughter, she brought a bird skull into the house.
That's so
And she said-
Halloween-y.
She had that emo phase,
Yeah, maybe.
She grows up so fast.
or goth, I guess it would be a goth phase.
She asked you, where can I put this? I said, not in our house. And that was a boundary. And she knows that, like, maybe it's okay. But also, she knows she's not being deprived of anything either. But I'll tell you this. The chaos piece is really what stood out to me from Amy's question here. If you're experiencing chaos and now you have to deal with all of the stuff, that's adding more chaos. Maybe one way to quiet some of that chaos is to jettison any of the junk that is no longer serving you. We got a whole lot more to talk about, but Alabama, what do you got for us in the meantime?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, this is Maggie from Central Virginia. I wanted to call in with a tip regarding episode 395, The Pain of Clinging. Gabby had written in with a question about whether she should stay or go. And on the surface, paying $1,200 a month in rent in San Francisco sounds amazing, but it sounded like there were some underlying issues that might prompt her to make a change. And I just wanted to share that sometimes when we're faced with a choice where there are really big pros and really big cons to each choice, it helps to do a voice recording, something like this, or a letter to self that you can reference once the choice has been made and followed through on. So, I hope that Gabby makes a decision that she's comfortable with. But let's say in a year, she has moved out of that situation and is paying more like $3,500 a month in rent somewhere else. And she might be kicking herself or thinking, well, it might not have been so bad if I had stayed at $1,200 a month rent. And she can reference the voice recording or letter that she's made for herself to say, oh no, I'm reassured that I made the correct choice. Because if I had stayed, here are all those cons that I would have been facing. This technique has helped me in the past when I've been faced with a big decision, and I hope that it will help someone else out there. Thanks.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour Maximal edition of episode 416. It was so much fun, and it included a bunch of extra questions we didn't get to in this public broadcast. Questions like, what material possessions did Ryan first unpack during his packing party? How do I tell my mom I don't want any of her stuff when she dies? What is the minimalist list of essential Amazon purchases? All this week, we all have a minimalist home tour from one of our team members. Danny Unknown's home will be revealed. Also, we got Danny and Amy a minimalist wedding gift for his wedding, plus much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalist private podcast, patreon.com/theminimalist, or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You also gain access to all of our podcast archives all the way back to episode 001. And if you're still on the fence, Patreon is now offering free trials. So if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. And that's our minimal episode for today. If you leave here with just one message, please let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.